Welcome to Survivor Angels, Lightcast edition. There's a moment that happens for most people at some point in their growth where they realize something, and it's not a small realization. They know something is true. Not intellectually, not as an idea that they've heard before, but in a deeper way, where something inside them recognizes it and says, yes, this is it. And for a brief moment, everything feels clear. But then life continues. And somewhere between that moment of clarity and the reality of daily life, something shifts. Because knowing something is true and living in alignment with it are not the same thing. And that space in between, the space where you can see clearly, but you're not consistently living what you see, that's where a lot of people begin to feel stuck. It's about recognizing the experience. I've had this happen in ways that felt almost frustrating at times. Moments where something became so clear to me that it felt undeniable. I could see patterns differently. I could understand what was aligned and what wasn't, and I could recognize where I was overriding myself, where I was overextending myself, where I was holding on to things that just didn't fit anymore. And in those moments, I would think, this changes everything. But then I would find myself, sometimes hours later, sometimes days later, responding in the same ways I always had. Saying yes when something in me hesitated. Staying longer than felt natural. And explaining things away that I had already recognized as misaligned. And that's when I realized something had shifted. Something had shifted how I understood growth entirely. Awareness doesn't immediately become embodiment. There's a space between the two. Gap. What's that gap? That gap between knowing and living is not failure, first and foremost. It's not inconsistency. And it's not a sign that what you realized wasn't real. It's a transition space. It's where your awareness has expanded, but your patterns, meaning your habits, your responses, your way of moving through the world, they haven't finally caught up yet. And that space can feel quite uncomfortable because you can no longer say, I didn't know, because you do know, but you're not fully living it yet. This feels so frustrating because there's a kind of tension that comes with this stage. Because once you see something clearly, it becomes harder to ignore when you move out of alignment with it. Before awareness, there's less internal conflict. You're simply acting from what you've always known. But after awareness, there's contrast. You can feel the difference between what aligns and what doesn't. You can recognize when something matches your truth and when it doesn't. And that recognition creates a kind of internal friction when your actions don't match your awareness. I never said this would be easy, but uncomfortable isn't bad. And it's not because you're doing something wrong, but because you're becoming more accurate. There's an upside here, a personal moment of realization. I remember a time when I had a very clear awareness around overextending myself in certain interactions. It wasn't subtle. It wasn't obvious. Not at all. I could feel exactly when I started to move beyond what felt natural. I could recognize the moment where I shifted from being present to overgiving. And this wasn't just one isolated time. I'm talking about this one in particular. And I thought, this is it. I'll just stop doing that. But what I found was that even with that clarity, guess what? The pattern still showed up. Not because I didn't understand it, but because it had been practiced so many times that it extended beyond conscious thought. And that's when I understood that knowing something doesn't immediately undo what has been repeated over time. It doesn't break that cycle. There's a nature to patterns. Patterns don't disappear the moment you become aware of them. They've been built through repetition, through choices, through responses and behaviors that have been reinforced over time. So when your awareness shifts, it doesn't erase the pattern. It illuminates it. Oh, bright light. Oh, hello, light. And thank you for that. And that illumination is what gives you the opportunity to change it. But the change itself happens gradually through different choices made over time. And that's where people get stuck. This is where a lot of people become discouraged. They think, if I know this, why am I still doing it? And they start to question their awareness, or they assume they're not as aligned as they thought. But the truth is, this stage is not a sign that something is wrong. It's a sign that something is integrating. The gap exists because your system is recalibrating. And here comes the angels in this space. This is one of the spaces where the presence of angels becomes especially meaningful, but not in a way that removes the process. They don't close the gap for you. You've heard me say so many times, angels don't do the work for you. They support you within it. You got to do the work. There have been moments for me where I recognized I was about to repeat a pattern, and instead of fully being pulled into it, there was a subtle pause. Almost like a moment of awareness being held open just long enough for me to see what I was about to do. It's like a hand came up in front of me. That pause didn't force me to choose differently, but it did make the choice visible. And that kind of awareness feels supported. It feels steady, almost like something is helping you stay conscious in a moment where you would normally move quite automatically. To me, that's one of the clearest ways angelic presence shows up, not by changing your actions, but by helping you remain aware within them. Let within become your new guide word. There's an importance here of this pause. I love my pause. I love the universe's pause, because that pause is everything. Because the gap between knowing and living is bridged in small moments, not one big leap for mankind, not one big shift. It's bridged when you notice yourself about to say yes and you go, oh! You hesitate. When you recognize a pattern starting and choose even slightly to respond differently. When you stay aware long enough to make a conscious choice instead of an automatic one. Each of those moments may seem small, but they accumulate. And over time, they begin to reshape the pattern. A guided awareness moment. I want you to bring to mind something you know is true for you right now. We kind of did this in the last Lightcast episode. Not something you've heard, something you've recognized. It could be a boundary, a change, a shift in how you respond, or something you've even outgrown. Now notice something. Are there moments where you're not fully living that yet? Just observe that without judgment. And then notice this. When you think about living it, does something in you hesitate, even slightly? That hesitation is part of the gap. Not resistance in a negative sense, but the space where your system is adjusting. And if you stay with that awareness, you may also notice a steadiness beneath it. A part of you that already knows what alignment feels like. That's what you're moving toward. That's what integration actually looks like. Integration is not immediate, and it's not perfect, and it's not linear, and it looks like recognizing something, or forgetting it, remembering it again, and slowly choosing differently over time. It looks like catching yourself earlier than you did before. Now, all of a sudden, I got an itchy nose here. Okay, angels, I know you're here. My nose is itching. It looks like making a different choice once, and then again, and then more consistently. And eventually, what was once something you knew becomes something you naturally do. It's the shift from effort to embodiment. At first, living what you know takes effort. You have to stay aware. You have to pause, take your pause. You have to choose intentionally. But over time, those choices become more natural. That's our goal. They require less effort because the pattern itself has changed. And that's when you move from knowing into embodiment. Not because you forced it, but because you practiced it. Here's a deeper truth about growth. Growth is not just about gaining awareness. It's about allowing that awareness to reshape how you move through your life. And that takes time. Not because you're slow, but because your system is integrating something new and you've got all this stuff around you that's causing distractions, and that's why it doesn't happen immediately. So if you find yourself in that space where you know something is true, but you're not fully living it yet, there is absolutely nothing wrong with you. You are not falling behind. You are not in the process, or I should say, you are in the process of integration. And that process is where real change happens. Not in the moment of realization, but in the moments that follow, where you begin to live it one choice at a time. Pay attention to what you know is true for you. And be patient with the space where you're learning to live it. Because that space, the one that feels uncertain at times, is where your awareness becomes your reality, supported in ways you may only just be beginning to recognize. Activate your angels.